fellow travelers. Welcome to the 101st level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage, Ryan Turford, and I am joined for this very special palindrome episode. Because get it? Because it's 101 backwards
That's
and
true.
forwards. It's the same. Of course,
Yes.
The doctor, Mr. Garret Bland, the level 99 elf medic. How's it going, Garret?
I'm doing good. So now that we're level 101 and the 101st level,
Yeah,
and we're level 99, are we struggling?
we're taking some damage.
Do we need someone else to help us out here, or does it scale with party members? What's going on in the metaverse, in this meta game of these RPGs that we're
The
going
RPG
through?
Cave metaverse. Well, what's going on?
Yes, RPG game. I want to build this, man.
So first of
We need
all,
to do this.
Garret, we already have the carpool gaming metaverse or universe, like cinematic universe that holds all the podcasts together. And then on top of that, a microcosm of that is also the RPG Cave metaverse encapsulated inside the carpool gaming cinematic universe. Almost like I think we're almost like the this. Netflix Daredevil series. Like we're like the Defenders almost, because that was a microcosm inside the Marvel cinematic universe. In a way.
I like that. I think another pitch is, what if in this carpool gaming cinematic universe they made this other metaverse that is the RPG Cave metaverse? So it's like a universe within a universe that we've created. So maybe there is someone else making this world that's making this happen too. And we're just going through, just infinite loops. I just want to confuse people right now. That's what I'm doing.
Clearly, that's what you're trying to do. But also, Garret, you're actually secretly, without knowing this, of course, you're secretly actually re-inciting the entire plot of Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin, because that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens in that game.
No, exactly. You killed it.
Like literally what you just described is the story of that game.
It's sounding more and more like Final Fantasy 16 as well. There's some Kingdom Hearts stuff going on. I'm just like, no, I'm good. What are you doing? What are you doing with these games?
I'm very excited, Garret, later to get to Yarden's sick burn about Final Fantasy, because that's coming up later in the show.
I love it so much.
We're not talking about sick burns right now. We're, of course, clearing the dungeon of those pesky mobs so we can get to that raid boss as quickly as possible. So, folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, if you're watching the live stream right now, we're at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't hit that subscribe button already, and let us know in the comments below what non-RPG franchises you think should get RPGs. We want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below. Also, of course, ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live or whenever we put up a new video on the channel. Also, if you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to rate us there, and also, leave us a nice Apple Podcast review if you're over on Apple Podcasts. And of course, hit that subscribe button as well. Last but not least, if you want all of our carpool gaming content on one big podcast feed, or if you want some exclusive content, you can head on over to our patreon.com/carpool gaming. Throw a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content. And last but not least, Garret, I have a little thing that I feel needed to promote, and that, of course,
go for it.
Xbox Drive 300, baby. It's happening Wednesday, July 19th, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time is when it's happening. It will be a 300-minute episode of the Xbox Drive. So that's a 5-hour show with myself and Sean Capri, and maybe some special guests that you might see along the way. We're going to have a lot of fun. We've got some cool topics. So I am very, very excited for Xbox Drive 300. Of course, I'll be there. Sean will be there. Other people will be there. It's going to be a good time. But we have a special giveaway that is still going on if you are listening to this when this podcast comes out, because the contest will be live until the end of Xbox Drive 300. So midnight Eastern Daylight Time on Thursday is the deadline for this giveaway. We are giving away 2 big prizes for Xbox Drive.
Okay.
We're giving away 300 ID at Xbox games. So that will go to one lucky winner.
That's a lot of games.
And the other lucky winner will be receiving a custom Xbox Drive 300 Xbox Elite controller, Elite Series 2 controller, with all the accessories and everything else. We kind of went all out with this. It's going to be a really, really sweet prize. So to enter, No purchase is necessary. You don't have to be a patron or anything like that. One entry to the prize will be if you tweet at myself or Sean or both of us a picture of you submitting an Apple Podcast review or rating in the Xbox Drive on Spotify. And then if you want a bunch of entries, we also, Garrett, have a limited edition Xbox Drive 300 t-shirt on the
Nice.
over at carpoolgaming.com. Get yourself an Xbox Drive 300 t-shirt, of course, designed by Seth Sturgill. It looks really, really nice. And if you buy one and let us know that you got a shirt, you actually get 3 entries into the contest as well. 3
Wow.
So we will be doing the drawing at the end of the episode. So midnight on Thursday Eastern, on July 20th at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We will be doing the draw for that prize. So you're not going to want to miss out. And, you know, if you don't want to enter, that's totally cool. Just still come hang out with us that day. I think we're going to have a ton of fun, or just a lot of cool.
Ryan, I have a question.
Yeah.
Will you be watching the movie of the year of 2006, the movie 300? Directed by Zack Snyder.
Are we going to be watching the movie 300 while we do Xbox Drive 300? You know, yes. I hadn't really thought about being that.
Sorry, 2007.
That's too good of an idea for us to ignore. I have to let Sean Capri know about that because I honestly did not think about that. The real question is, Garrett,
2 hours.
Should we also play the 300 video game? Because there is a video game based off 300. It was exclusive to the PSP.
Really?
Exclusive to on PSP. No other consoles, just PSP.
What? Yeah. I need to look this up now. This is too good to be true.
In fact, Garrett, the same year.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, the same year that 300 for PSP came out was also the same year that we got Alien versus Predator Requiem, based off the movie Alien versus Predator Requiem, which again, the only console to receive a copy of that game was the PSP as well.
So it's called 300 March to Glory. It released February 27, 2007, and it has a 55 Metacritic score. Yeah, but the user score is 6.3. So it's bad, probably. Yeah. And it's a beat 'em up. Okay,
well,
cool.
It's not so much bad as much as it's just mediocre. It's nothing to write home about. It's not bad. Like, it's not, because back then, that was when we saw a lot more game reviewers that when they saw bad games would give them 3s and 2s. So didn't get at least that. But it's just, you know, very kind of mediocre kind of game, just like Alien versus Predator Requiem on PSP as well. Because I kind of could join those two together because they're the 2 exclusive movie games that are exclusive, of course, to PSP. Because of course they are.
I did not play PSP at all during that time. I didn't even know, like, I knew there was a PlayStation handheld. I just didn't know what it was at all. I was so detached from the PlayStation ecosystem during that time. So
yeah, I actually bought a PSP the day it came out, Garrett, and I was really excited for it. And then I got it home and I was like, cool, I can watch Spider-Man 2 on it, because every PSP, Garrett, came with a copy of Spider-Man 2 on UMD.
With the little tiny discs or something like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're called UMDs, Universal Media Discs. And
they're not universal, let me tell you.
And well, that was the hit new format that Sony was going for. They're like, this is going to work with everything, all kinds of stuff. And it worked just with the PSP. But then, but when the PSP came out, there was like no games for it. Like there was a few, but it was just like the launch lineup for PSP was terrible, and we just didn't get games fast enough in North America for PSP to really, really catch on until later in its life cycle. So most people actually came in on the 2000 model, which was the second iteration of PSP. And
right. Now you can play everything on Vita or, you know, a local emulator near
Not you. Everything. You can't play 300 for PSP on your PlayStation Vita. It's not available, Garrett.
Well, I mean, I think that's better. We're better off without it. So
no, we don't want to lose these great movie games. Anyways, we've talked enough about the PSP. We should probably get into the actual show proper, because Garrett, it is time to read from the sacred texts, because we got a topic that we're revisiting tonight. We did this topic back in October of last year, so it's been a little while since we've done this topic. In fact, the last time we did this topic was when the Week Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope came out. We talked about that on the show, actually.
Yes.
When I went back and listened to it. So we are going to talk about, once again, pitching non-RPG franchises, or franchises that are not traditionally known for RPGs. What we're going to pitch games for those franchises that hopefully we'll have. I also threw the call as well because I'm going to list off now the games that we pitched on the last episode, because since it has been a long time since we've covered this topic, not everyone is familiar with what we picked last time, Garrett. But I also threw the idea out there that we could also update our pitches on some of these games as well if we had updates to them, which comes into play a little bit later because Garrett actually has one he wanted to update, which we'll talk about later in the show. So
yes,
here's what we pitched last time, and I think this is a pretty good list when you look at it, Garrett. We got Infamous from your boy. That was my first pick, and I talked about it being like a turn-based role-playing game, and it made a lot of sense with like the powers, and you could have done stuff with the choices and stuff like that. I think would be pretty cool. You had the interesting choice of Star Fox being a role-playing game.
Yeah, that's a slam dunk. That's a home run. Nintendo, just take it away. Just make it, please, right now. Star Fox should be an RPG.
Another like slam dunk that I'm actually surprised isn't an RPG already is Resident Evil, because like that franchise makes a ton of sense to be an RPG. It have an RPG spinoff. They've had all kinds of spinoffs of Resident Evil, but they've never gone down the RPG wheelhouse, and I think it would be really cool for them to do that. A franchise that almost got an RPG but didn't, so Garrett wanted to rectify that, was BioShock. That was one of your picks as well from last time, which we almost had. There was almost a PlayStation Vita tactical role-playing game based off BioShock. Yeah, it would have been great. Yeah. One of the ones that I pitched that I couldn't believe also hasn't been announced yet is Overwatch. Overwatch seems like perfect for like a tactics role-playing game or something like that. Like a game where you have like so many different heroes, like almost like a Fire Emblem party, you know, having like a strategy game with all the different powers and variations with all the heroes just made too much sense. This was back, Garrett, when I was talking about The Sims every single week on Xbox Drive. So of course I pitched the idea of The Sims role-playing game. I mean, The Sims already kind of is like a simulation kind of role-playing game anyways. Especially with like the vampire DLC and stuff where your character actually gets leveled and has an XP system and a gear system and stuff. So like, it's kind of an RPG already, but I kind of pitched that as an idea. You had the idea for Horizon, the Horizon series, being like RPGs, and the Horizon games already have RPG elements, but you had like a more RPG focused game with Horizon as well. Then you actually brought up Titanfall, Garrett, which was essentially like your pitch for it was basically Skyrim, but with mechs was your idea for Titanfall before.
Yes.
But, again, we'll get to that one in a little bit. And then my last pick from last time was Guilty Gear, which again, similar to Overwatch, lots of cool and interesting characters with unique abilities. I think is just a recipe for a good like tactical or just standard turn-based role-playing game right there. But
cool.
There you go. Those are our picks from last time. But tonight,
good lineup.
Yeah. So tonight, Garrett, we each came together with 5 picks. We have a couple honorable mentions as well. And we're going to kind of go through it and talk this out, my friend. So I'm going to start with you because I've talked a whole lot. And I'm going to take a sip of water. So tell me about your first game, my friend.
Sure. So, as Ryan said, we can update some of these games to do, just like a different take on it. And I don't know what I don't even remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. So I definitely don't remember what I mentioned about Titanfall in October of 2022 and what it can be an RPG. But I think let's get back to Titanfall. Titanfall universe is amazing. I love the world, the atmosphere, of course. What's the other free-to-play game that goes with this world?
Apex Legends.
Apex Legends, that's it. They do a really good job of just flexing what this world is. I think they just need to go back and just make Titanfall, and not first-person shooter, but they need a XCOM like squad-based role-playing game for this. Definitely. It just screams that, because you got the pilots, you got the Titans, you can have relationships or skills or whatever between the pilots and the Titans. And you go out, do a mission, go through a certain levels or mission and objectives or whatever. It is cover based. So, you get behind certain buildings or whatever. You can make certain skills happen and move sets. You can actually release from your pilot and then like kind of manage both your pilot and your Titan. Maybe your Titan goes in at certain points and so on and so forth. I think it is ripe for a squad based Wasteland or XCOM like role-playing game. So yeah, that is my pitch for a new Titanfall RPG. These pilot relations, exactly, Sean. So
Yeah. Will there
there you
be
go.
pilot relations in Titanfall, the RPG?
You best believe it. I don't know if they'll take their helmet off, but you better believe there will be pilot relations with each other and with Titans too, of course. Yes.
Oh my god, of course with the Titans. I mean, it's true. I mean, Baldur's Gate's
That's
doing
true.
some weird things. Why not Titanfall, the RPG? Why not that go in
Hey,
weird directions?
role-playing game. All
Yeah.
right.
I think that's actually better than your pitch last time, because I think like
Definitely.
the idea of like an open world Skyrim style Titanfall was interesting, because you're kind of getting that in Titanfall 2, but just in smaller bursts. But like the idea of having like this big, like this strategy, like tactical game, I think makes a lot more sense. I mean, we're both just laughing in the chat right now, of course. But
of course.
I actually, I really like that idea, Garrett. I think you were right to update it, because I think that's definitely a much better approach to it, to Titanfall. And I would be down to play that game for sure.
Yeah. And I think developers have, well, one developer has made this basically. It's just not the Titanfall name, and it's called BattleTech. And they do kind of like this, a tactics based with mechs kind of involved into it. So I would definitely check that out. I heard great reviews from that as well. So go check out if you're wanting to get into that type of thing. So
well, and there's
there you
actually
go.
another series, Garrett. I've talked about it on the show a couple times, but it's one that isn't super popular here in North America, because we only got 2 entries in this series here. And they were mostly in Japan, but Sakura Wars is the other one that I would say that
Right,
really
Sakura Wars.
from Sega that it really reminds me of, because even though the newest iteration of Sakura Wars was an action RPG, all the other Sakura Wars games are tactical role-playing games that also feature mechs. So kind of a similar idea to what you described. In fact, the one on the Wii that they did that takes place in like a steampunk 1920s New York City, that one is very much a strategy role-playing game in the style you just kind of described. So, and that's also got the dating sim application either. So you'd also have appease Sean Capri with the waifus while also piloting mechs and stuff like that.
Hey man, we got to get every aspect of the audience for sure. Yeah,
absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely.
All right,
oh, just go. What's your game, right?
Well, luckily enough, Garrett, my first game is my only other one that is in this similar style that you just described, because I also came up with the idea for a tactical role-playing game similar to XCOM or Gears Tactics is kind of the direction I was going with this one, but with some more RPG-ness. And that one is Starcraft from Blizzard Entertainment. This is one that was almost my honorable mention last time, but it wasn't. In fact, we talked about it a little bit on that episode, because I mentioned the April Fool's joke that they did ages ago for Starcraft, where Blizzard just put out this tweet on April Fool's Day about the world of Starcraft being a thing, and they had this whole website with in-game screenshots of this fictional MMO in the Starcraft universe where you could play as like a Zerg or a Protoss or a Terran, and you go around. It was just like World of Warcraft, but with Starcraft, which of course I'm just like, why did they announce like that as an April Fool's joke and not just make that an actual game? It would have just printed money. Like that still is beyond me as to why they never did that. But if you're going to take StarCraft in another direction, because like StarCraft is a series that, we haven't really gotten a new entry in 10 plus years. Like the third expansion, the second expansion for StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void was the last thing we got that was StarCraft rated. So people have been itching for like a StarCraft reboot of some kind, or just StarCraft to return in some way. And rather than doing rather than kind of starting from scratch from the real-time strategy side, I actually think like a tactical role-playing game in the StarCraft universe, or at least some kind of spin-off of StarCraft, is kind of the way they should go with it first, and then kind of they from there go back to the strategy, like the real-time strategy stuff with StarCraft. But I would love to see like an XCOM or Mario Rabbids style game. But the one I had in mind was like, you had 3 different campaigns in theory that you could play. Like you could play as the Zerg or the Terrans or the Protoss. And, depending on which campaign you're playing, you have access to different types of units with different classes that all kind of feel different to play. So it would feel very different from a lot of strategy role-playing games that we have currently. Because in XCOM, for example, you have like a bunch of different character classes, but they're all human and they all feel very similar to each other in a lot of ways. Versus something like StarCraft where you could go like really crazy with it and do some different stuff with it. And also, people just like the playing like there are fans of all three races in StarCraft, so I think it just makes perfect sense that a StarCraft tactical role playing game makes a lot of sense. Also, it just makes sense for StarCraft to stay in the tactics realm as well, since it comes from a real time strategy game. So I would love to see a tactical role playing game with all kinds of loot and gear and stats for your characters with StarCraft. I think that would be super cool.
That would be really cool. And then there's like totally different factions with StarCraft too. That's what really jump out at me is that like each team or whatever race it is in StarCraft has much different strategy in terms of units and stuff like that. You can make that easily transferable to this tactics role playing game, make each kind of faction pretty different with its gears and weapons. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
And the way that we kind of cross over too, the way I kind of envision is like, there are not all the humans are united with each other. Not all the Protoss legions are united with each other, and not all the Zerg legions are united with each other. So there are different factions within each race as well, and those can kind of serve as the enemies throughout the game. Like you could fight like Minx's faction from the human side, or some of the Dark Templars, or so some of the other Protoss races, or the Zerg that have kind of separated themselves from Kerrigan's control would be really interesting. Or you could even bring in some new threat to the universe, like some new Xel'Naga race that they could have invented, or just something else. Like I think there's a lot of lore that could be used to really flesh out this universe and kind of make it really special by doing something more than just a real-time strategy game. So
I think you're speaking to Sean like so much right now with this game. He would be totally into it.
Me too, though, because I'm also like a big fan of StarCraft. Like, that's where in a lot of ways, that's how my gaming really continued through life, because I played StarCraft pretty competitively over the years. Like I was in StarCraft Pro League for years for StarCraft.
Dang. I didn't know
specifically
this.
Wings of Liberty 1-on-1. I was in Pro League for a long time, just grinding matches like it was nobody's business.
Was it StarCraft 1 or 2?
2. When
specifically
when Wings of Liberty came out, that's when I was like all in on Pro League.
Got it.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's some type of weird mod of addition of some kind that's explaining that maybe is a tactics role playing game in a way.
Well, there are role playing game mods for StarCraft that people have made.
I'm sure. Yeah,
but you're right. Like there is, I don't know if there's one that kind of fits my exact description. But yeah, like I think like that's why I think like it would be cool to see Blizzard kind of explore the space a little bit with some of this stuff, because like kind of like what I talked about last time with Overwatch, like Blizzard's a company that I would love to see kind of explore the space with some of the franchise, because they build these big, rich worlds with tons of lore and characters and things that you want to explore outside the base style games that they all have. And that's one of the reasons why like World of Warcraft to me was such a special game, was it finally kind of expanded the Warcraft universe in a way outside of the comfortable space that it enjoyed with real-time strategy games. And I'd love to see kind of the similar treatment happen with StarCraft or Overwatch or Diablo. Like different styles of games in those same universes, I think would be really cool.
Sounds good, man. I like it. Thanks. Really awesome.
All right. Next up, Garrett, what do you got for me?
All right. Game number 2. And I want this to happen, but knowing they're kind of pacing over the last decade, it's very doubtful, but this would be really cool. I want a Shovel Knight role-playing game. All right.
This intrigues me.
So
I need to know more.
I love Shovel Knight. It is a great franchise. I love going through the original game and its DLC. I've played some of the side games. I love the world that they've built with this game, with Shovel Knight as the main character, and of course there's side characters and mainly villains. There's mostly villains in this game. Very similar to Mega Man, I would say, just going through the various levels and bosses. This Shovel Knight RPG needs to be a traditional turn-based game, role-playing game, very similar to, let's say, Chrono Trigger or Dragon Quest. I want this to be, let's have a beginning to end linear story that goes through area to area, and follows the story. It follows a prequel story of the original Shovel Knight game. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything with Shovel Knight itself because I think it has a really cool background in terms of characters. But I will say the party needs to be ever evolving in this prequel. I want Shovel Knight, of course, as kind of the main character. Um, and then we'll have Black Knight and Shield Knight as well as side characters. And again, I won't say anything more because it's really going into spoiler territory, and everyone should really play Shovel Knight because it's just, and it's such a special platforming game. And it's also, maybe it takes like, if you're pretty decent with platforming games, I would say it takes like 6 or 7 hours to beat. It's not that long at all. So, yeah, this is just what I want, is like develop your own story. I would like someone like Team Asano to like really take the helm of this because I think they're masters of the craft of the turn-based games now, of course, with Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default and so on and so forth. They would be the best fit. But of course, it is an indie based developer. So of course, contracting over there would be impossible. But I'm sure some indie developers would be enthralled or really get into this. Like the Chain Echoes developers would be one. I would 100% be on board with that. But yeah, this is what I want, is a turn-based traditional Shovel Knight RPG.
You're speaking my language, Garrett, because I also love Shovel Knight. Like 2014 on my very first podcast I ever did, because on my very first podcast, the Game Moose podcast, our very first episode was at the end of 2014, and we did our favorite games of 2014 was our very first episode of the podcast. And Shovel Knight was my favorite game that came out that year, even though when I look back on that year now, Alien Isolation, I think, has kind of supplanted itself in my memory as my favorite game of 2014. But I also love Shovel Knight. I'm a huge Shovel Knight fan. It's also just like Shovel Knight's only gotten better as well with the expansions that we got for Shovel Knight. Like, because with Spectre or Torment, they did kind of the prequel thing with that, which I really enjoyed. And then King Knight's DLC was really good too. So they've kind of done the prequel thing, but I would love, to your point, Garrett, of them exploring the space a little bit and kind of focusing on a prequel that focuses around Shovel Knight's story specifically in a prequel. I think would be really cool. Again, not to spoil things, because of course there is some cool story beats that happen in Shovel Knight if y'all haven't played it. But they've definitely, like, I wouldn't lose hope on something like this, Garrett, because they've done a bunch of Shovel Knight spinoffs before, like they've done
two,
the puzzle game.
Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, and man, I forgot what it's called. I have one of them on my Steam Deck.
Like there's and not only that, you're right. Like I think a lot of, you probably wouldn't be able to get Team Asano to do this, but I think like you could get some indie developers that might want to be involved in a project like this. Like I think of another company comes to mind is Zeboyd Games. I think is a company that
Zeboyd would be perfect.
What would be perfect for this type of thing, and would be probably on board to do something like this. Like I think that would like a Shovel Knight RPG from Zeboyd would be super cool. And they've done licensed stuff before with the Penny Arcade role-playing game. So I think like there's like a fit there, or there are some other studios as well that I think would fit as well. So I wouldn't give up on this. I think like that could actually be like a reality of something we see one day. Barring them maybe doing like their next project being like Shovel Knight 64 or something like that, because they always talked about that idea where after Shovel Knight, the next game they would do in the Shovel Knight universe would be at like a Mario 64 style Shovel Knight game, and then from there it'd be like a Mario Sunshine style Shovel Knight game, and kind of following the trajectory of Mario is how they always describe Shovel Knight. But that doesn't mean spinoffs can't happen, because we've always seen a ton. So
I need the spinoff to happen though. I think this world is ready for a turn-based traditional role-playing game. Make it like, man, I would love it to be traditional turn-based, like Dragon Quest, old Final Fantasy style, for sure. That would be great.
I mean, Garrett, if they can do something similar to Rybo's point, with Age of Empires, with that DS Age of Empires, then they can do that with Shovel Knight as well. Of course, you've talked about that game a couple times on the show, so I wanted to highlight Rybo's
Love it
as well. All right, Garrett, you ready for my next one? This one's a little out there, but stick with me on this one. So there's this game, a little game that was released on the original Xbox called Jade Empire. I don't know if you've heard of this little game, Garrett.
I've heard of it. It's
Yeah.
very little, but yeah.
It's not really that
holding
little. It's a pretty big game. It's from BioWare, of course. And we, I've been waiting patiently for them maybe to return to the world of Jade Empire one day, but I've kind of given up hope that BioWare will ever go back to Jade Empire at this point. It sounds like they're basically doing Dragon Age and Mass Effect until the cows come home at this point.
Until they get bankrupt.
Yes, exactly. So when I was thinking about the idea of like who could take up the mantle of like a kung fu style, martial arts style action RPG, there's one franchise that already exists, Garrett, that really came to mind here. And that franchise is Mortal Kombat. I think Mortal Kombat could make a really cool martial arts style action RPG in a similar style as Jade Empire. So let me explain my pitch here. So the story I came up with is it's going to focus on the Lin Kuei. Of course, that's the ninja clan that Scorpion and Sub-Zero are part of. And Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Smoke have to team up in this action RPG adventure as they battle the evil forces of Outworld. You can switch between 3 different characters, like outside of combat, just like you do in Jade Empire. And you also get new abilities for all the characters as you progress. You can also recruit new characters along the way from across the Mortal Kombat universe, including Sonya, Kano, Shang Tsung, and Shao Kahn. Like that's kind of the idea that I had going on for Mortal Kombat. I think it would be super cool to do this, like, again, this action RPG inspired by martial arts with all these different, using the abilities the characters have from Mortal Kombat, and allowing you to switch between the characters and having them all kind of feel like have their own feel to them. And just, again, flushing out the rich universe that is Mortal Kombat. Because like, that's one of the things I like about the campaign for Mortal Kombat is I think they do a great job of establishing this really big world with a bunch of different, factions and a lot of political strife that's going on between them, and like there's this giant power struggle that's always happening, and I just love that stuff, and I feel like this would really again help expand the universe of Mortal Kombat by giving us something different with it. And it almost is reminiscent of another original Xbox game as well, that they went with Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, starring Liu Kang and Kung Lao. That wasn't an RPG. That was like a beat 'em up in the Mortal Kombat universe. But that's another game that really kind of inspired this idea of, well, why not just take that a step further and establish that as like a role-playing game, almost like a BioWare style role-playing game with choices and stuff like that. I think it'd be super cool. So that's my pitch. Mortal Kombat, the action RPG. But what do you think, Garrett?
I would be down. I would play that. I don't play fighting games as you know, and I don't particularly care for them, but this would kind of jump me the boundary over to the Mortal Kombat world. I mean, hey, maybe they'll convince me to try out one of the Mortal Kombat games. I think the jujitsu fighting action RPG style is really it's a niche. It's very small. There's only a few notable series like Yakuza, of course, and Sleeping Dogs, actually one of my favorite action RPGs. I wouldn't say that's an RPG per se, but it's in this similar vein. I would be down for this and make it a step further into like choice-based type of stuff. I'm wondering, is it like kind of build your own character type of thing, or is it
no, you'll play as the 3 characters and you can switch between them out of combat.
I see. 3 characters. Okay, cool.
Yeah, cool. And those are and like there are other characters that in my idea that you'll recruit other characters as you progress through the story. Those are just the 3 you'll start with. But just similar to Jade Empire, because that game kind of works similarly. So
cool. I need to play Jade Empire too. I have it somewhere.
It's really good, but the combat itself, it doesn't hold up as much nowadays, which is why, like, I think like a modern take on Jade Empire, I think would probably blow people.
That would be
like,
great.
I think it would be really good. Which I'm still surprised. Like, and maybe it's just because of the EA effect of them owning BioWare.
I think so.
I'm surprised that they never went back to Jade Empire all these years later, because that game is one of their best games in my opinion.
But, I think it's just a very old game that's not much staff there has like probably most of them hasn't even worked on Jade Empire.
Yeah.
Of course, they
Oh yeah,
have
all
the
those people
source
are gone
material.
at
Yeah,
this
all
point.
those people are gone. So
Yeah.
it would be fitting for another studio to try that out, maybe. So,
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah,
cool.
it was the same team that made KOTOR that made Jade Empire. So like
That's true.
it's all that same talent. But again, most of that talent left pretty much after Mass Effect Andromeda or Mass Effect 3. So
Mhm.
anyways, Garrett, give me your
Cool.
third one. What do you got next?
Okay, number 3, I got Daredevil. All right, we
Oh,
got a Daredevil. I want an action RPG, but I want to be very specific with this because of course we've gotten the superhero action RPG with Spider-Man, with Batman, and all the other superhero games that, is coming out. So I want to be so it will be like a similar vein as Spider-Man, but instead of like, oh, go to checkpoint, do this mission, side mission, or whatever, and kind of like rank up very similar to the template open world games that you see now. I want more of like smaller villains, like Marvel villains everywhere, and I want an enemy system mechanics very similar to Shadow of Mordor.
okay.
I think that would be really cool, especially with Matt Murdock. I love Daredevil, the show itself. I think his fighting style is pretty neat, and I think you can make it pretty unique in a game, in a video game. And I'm wondering, of course, you want it to be seen, but during combat or during certain events or skills, you can go blind and then do like kind of be overpowered and see the senses and what have you. I think that would be pretty cool to do. So yeah, that's what I'm pitching is kind of this Daredevil action RPG. It's open world, but it's not necessarily like the Spider-Man template type of
Yeah.
thing going on.
Like it
I would
sounds more
like it.
like what you're describing
Yeah.
is like more of an RPG focused Middle Earth Shadow of War, but with Daredevil instead of um
Yeah.
the guy from Middle Earth Shadow of War.
Yeah, exactly. And then like maybe like also have like faction territories like throughout and you try to bog them down.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I think that's what I would be totally down
Yeah.
for is this kind of thing. So what do you think, Ryan?
People have been asking for a Daredevil game forever. So I mean, making a lot of people probably pretty happy right now because people have
Yes.
been like, this is a character that people have wanted in games pretty much ever since. Like, if it wasn't before the TV show, it was definitely after the TV show. We people were asking for Daredevil games, and Daredevil, Garrett. I don't know if you knew this, but Daredevil's had games before, back in
Okay.
back in the Ben Affleck days of Daredevil,
Oh goodness.
because they
Yeah.
had a Daredevil game on every console based off the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, but they haven't really done Daredevil since. So, and
Yeah.
of course they did a terrible job with the old Daredevil games. So it's just like, yeah, I think it's time for him to get another game in the similar vein that like around the same time that was when we got the movie Blade with Wesley Snipes, and they made a Blade video game, and that game was bad too. Like, it's time for them maybe to explore some of these older characters that had games before that they didn't work out the first time. And I think Daredevil, I think is a great example of that. I think you
Yeah.
nailed it with that one. Like, if
And I
there was
want
going to be a Daredevil game, I think that's the way you do it.
yeah, so that's okay. I pitched you the superhero part. Here comes the lawyer part. Okay,
Oh,
so the other half of this Daredevil RPG is like an Ace Attorney style lawyer Matt Murdock game. And I want the choices in there and the cases in there influence what's going on in the action part of the
okay.
game. So you got this kind of Tale of Two Cities type of thing, duality RPG going on, very similar to like, let's say Persona or whatever. And so you can go between luring it up with Matt Murdock and going through cases. Maybe you can like, unlock a superhero or a companion through this case of yours, and then he can help you out, during side missions or main missions or trying to take down one of your enemies or whatever. So there you go. That's my spin to it.
Nice.
So
I mean, I was not expecting
Daredevil, Ace Attorney. Let's go.
the
I love it.
mashup of the century, Ace Attorney and Meddler Shadow of War in a Daredevil in the Daredevil skin. But here we are. That's the reality we live in. But I mean, that would be cool. Again,
It
that
would
kind of
only
fits,
work with Daredevil.
yeah, no, that totally fits all, but that's like super flavorful with the character of Daredevil. I think that makes
Yes.
a ton of sense. So, and yeah, like I wouldn't want to, like, regardless of what style of Daredevil game we get ever, if they ever make a Daredevil game, like I would want to see that side of it too, like not just be, him running around in the costume, but also
In the
the
costume,
Matt
yeah.
Murdock stuff too. Like I would want to see
I
both
would
of
love
those
that.
sides anyways. So
Mhm,
I think that's a good
mhm.
way to do it. I think that's a good approach to it, Garrett. I think it's solid. Solid. I would play that game. And I don't even
Yeah.
love superhero stuff, but I would play that game.
Disney, contract the studio right now.
Do it.
Let's do it.
No, don't tell them to contract the studio now, Garrett. We're assuming they've already done this. Wink, wink.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Presume.
Presuming. All right. Next up, Garrett, speaking of a franchise that I talked about, like Starcraft that I talked about earlier, that I think is in need of like some spin-off games or like a solid reboot, because we got almost like a reboot of it earlier this year with a remake, but we haven't really, but it's been a long time since we've gotten side games of this game or just any expansion to this universe. And this universe is Dead Space is what I got. Cause you know me, I love my horror games. I would love to see more horror RPGs. In fact, that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show when we have go to our listener questions, because believe it or not, Garrett, we have lots of listeners that are excited about horror video games. But I think Dead Space would make like a really cool role-playing game. In fact, of course, I mean, just to give you another, chance for me to tell you about the wonders of Parasite Eve, Garrett. But I believe the combat system from Parasite Eve, or like something similar to it, would be perfect for Dead Space, because it would be turn-based. You would only have so many shots with your plasma cutter or some of your other weapons, so you had to make sure you were using kind of the right tool for the job. You would only basically play as one character. But this time around, I think the spin that I wanted to put on it to make it feel Dead Spacey, or to kind of separate it from the main Dead Space game, is to have it where you have different environment suits, and those different environment suits almost act like different character classes for your character. So you have access to different weaponry or like varying psychic abilities. Like maybe there's a suit where you get extra, like different, extra abilities that you normally wouldn't have with some of the other suits. So then that way you kind of tailor your suit based on what you're expecting to encounter in the areas that you're exploring on. What I assume, at least for a game like this, would be like a big open planet, not so much like a crap spaceship, but close, something more akin actually to Dead Space 3. But instead of an ice planet, maybe some other planet in the solar system where there's necromorphs. Like I think that would be really cool. Again, we just don't get enough horror RPGs, and I think Dead Space would actually make like a pretty good like survival horror role-playing game that's turn-based. They could really just ratchet up some of the tension with some crazy bosses and some big encounters, and I think it would be like a super fun and cool turn-based role-playing game. So that's what I got.
Nice.
Dead Space, turn-based survival horror game, of course inspired by the GOAT, Parasite Eve. What do you think, Garrett?
Of course. I love it. I haven't played too much of Dead Space. Years ago, probably like a couple hours. So yeah, I'm not familiar with the series, but I would be totally down for that survival horror aspect, especially in space, which is pretty neat, pretty creepy. I love it. And have it in a turn-based role-playing game style. I wish these kind of genre, these horror games, that's why I'm not really into them, because I feel always so weak, or I'm just like an uphill battle with these, just because I'm going through like a hallway with 5 monsters. I only have 2 bullets left. Like, what do I do? Type of thing. Oh, I have to hide or whatever. But this is more like, oh, this is just you're doing a turn-based game. You're going in, and of course you have limited resources, but at the same time, it is built for you to go to the next level. Based off of just certain sequences and turns. I would be totally down for this. Yeah.
I think
I would buy it.
I think it'd be really solid. And again, like I would love to see, and we talked about it on the last time we did this with Resident Evil. Like I would love to see more of these bigger horror franchises go in this direction or do something different like this, like do spin-off games. It's like the only spin-off Dead Space game we ever got was Dead Space Extraction on the Wii, which was a light gun shooter, which was also a really good game too. But I would love to see them like explore the space more with this. In fact, that's kind of like the theme of my list here, is like franchises exploring the space a little bit, because a lot of the franchises I picked really just kind of keep themselves in one genre and don't really try a bunch of different things. And I think like this is another case where it's like they can make the universe just feel so much bigger of Dead Space by doing something like this that's different from the main games.
Cool. That sounds good.
All right. What do you got next? Your fourth game, Garrett.
My fourth game is interesting, and I wonder if people would be familiar with this game at all. Maybe some do, but let me just go through the pitch. It is based off of the game Factorio. And I ever heard of this game, Ryan? It's from
not.
Steam. Yeah,
I have not.
You've heard of it?
Not heard of Factorio.
Okay. So it's a recent one. It came out like 3 years ago. It is a 2D kind of base building automated game where you kind of just go through. It's a real-time strategy like game where you're building bases and you're building like factories and automation. Kind of the point of the game is you want to build like a huge base in order to like defend you from monsters from the outside and what have you, which is great and all. And I like the game. I love how deep it is, how complex it is, because it's pretty it goes way deeper than most base building games, where it goes from raw material. You have to carry that raw material, make intermediate material, make factory lines, and then you make buildings and energy and so on and so forth. I want to take it a step further and just add a flavor of RPG mechanics to this Factorio game to make it more personable, because I think this game by itself is great. And I think it's great for just like if you want to go through that exercise, but I think it would be a little bit better if we had some more story relation to it, have some characters. There's like, why are you here in this alien world? Why are you building factories? I'm imagining more of like a Tellier-based game, more in terms of just like you're a character going through a cycle or schedules, and then you have certain materials coming in. What do you have to do for the day? Do you have to build certain things? Do you have to build out? So I'm thinking a mashup of like, let's say Dragon Quest Builders type of game, along with a Tellier franchise type of character relations and environment and so on and so forth. So there you go, Ryan. There's my kind of offbeat role-playing game, Factorio RPG. I would be a little bit better. I'm just saying I would like this more because I think adding a little bit more RPG mechanics to what already is a very great game would be pretty cool.
Well, it also sounds like you're trying to kind of expand the universe a bit, or make you have like a different perspective on things, where you're because it sounds like what you're describing anyways is you're not playing the overhead game of managing things. You're playing as a character in the world.
Exactly.
A big difference. So yeah, yes. I think I would be down for something like that. I didn't know this game existed until you just told me about it, where I just Googled it. So I learned a little bit more about it. And yeah, like I think like some franchises like that, like actually that kind of reminds me of what I talked about with Starcraft, like almost like where you get to explore the world itself through the eyes of its different characters, rather than having like this big overhead kind of general perspective on the world, which just helps kind of establish some great storytelling and characters and whatnot. Yeah, that sounds cool, man.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully they listen to it, but I doubt it.
Hopefully people listen to the show, Garrett, because again, a lot of these franchises are non-RPG franchises. I don't know if fans of Factorio or Mortal Kombat listen to the show, but who knows?
That's true.
All right. Well, Garrett, I mean, there's 2 franchises people have been asking to come back forever, because it's been a long time for one of these franchises, although it just got like its newest iteration in the Xbox One era. But the other one, other than a remake of some old games in the Xbox One generation, hasn't existed since the GameCube PS2 era. So Now, here's the thing. People have been asking these for 2 franchises to come back. So why not take these 2 franchises and have a crossover game together in one game, but also have it be an RPG? And those are Crash Bandicoot and Spyro. Like think about how cool that would be. Crash Bandicoot and Spyro coming together for the first time. People have been asking for Crash Bandicoot to come back. People have been asking for Spyro to come back. You have them come back in one crossover game that blends the 2 universes together. And the idea I had for this, Mario RPG style, where you play as Crash, you play as Coco, you play as Spyro, you play as Dr. Neo Cortex, you play as some original characters, some maybe like a Skylanders character or 2. Because please, there's no one anyone cares about in the Spyro universe besides Spyro, of course. But you have them go on this big adventure to stop this brand new threat that's that's basically threatening both universes, and it, have it turn-based, play very similarly to Mario RPG, where you're tapping the buttons along with the attacks in order to do some extra damage. And I think you give this, because Rybo is asking who would be the developer on this. I think Toys for Bob could actually do a good job with something like this. So
I think so too.
So
they're pretty versatile for sure.
I think this would be totally in their wheelhouse. So I think again, people have been asking for Crash and Spyro to come back, and obviously I feel like Crash and Spyro should have their own platforming games, because it's one of those things where when they bring these franchises back, eventually they should bring them back in their traditional style. But I also really would love the idea of, especially now that they're both going to be owned by Microsoft, like them going down this this road with this family friendly style Crash Bandicoot and Spyro crossover game that's like an RPG that's family friendly, that would just print money for Microsoft in a way that no one else would probably be expecting.
I think it's a goodwill type of game, I would totally be down for, hey, this acquisition just happened. Here's kind of the games that you can kind of expect coming out of this acquisition, which I would totally be down for.
Yeah, I look at this as like a love letter to the fans of both these series that have just been sticking around forever. And I think people would eat this up. Like people would be super, super excited about this. Like almost as excited as they would be if there was a new Banjo-Kazooie game. So I actually think this would be a really solid game. And it's in a way, a lot of ways, it's a no-brainer. Especially
it is a no-brainer. Yeah.
With the Mario RPG style, I'm actually surprised that more developers haven't tried that. I'm actually surprised that Sega never tried that with Sonic. They That's did the Sonic RPG on the DS. We all know about Sonic, Legend of the Dark Brotherhood, which was a good game by BioWare. But beyond that, we haven't really seen other mascots try this thing. Besides Bug Fables is the only one I can really think of, and that's not really
which is an indie developer. It's so other than that, and then the Mario and Luigi games. You really don't have much. I would totally like to see this. I agree with you, Ryan. Day one, Game Pass, love it.
Yeah, you would get so many Game Pass subscribers just for something like this. This is
of course
a slam dunk on so many levels with a lot of the fans of these franchises, and I think it's a perfect fit, because I think both of these universes are again very family friendly, just wacky and weird, and totally feel like they would fit together in such a great way that I really feel like this would be a great crossover game. So I think this would be a perfect game.
I love it.
All right. So Garrett, last game. What do you got?
Last game, and I'm going all out on this because I have a bunch of bullet points for this one. Ooh. So I'm gonna take you on a ride here. Of course. So there's a lot of RPGs in this franchise, but I want to pitch another RPG that I don't think anyone has really thought of too much. Star Wars, of course. We got the latest RPG, Star Wars Survivor.
That's not really a RPG though. I would say Jedi Survivor is closer to a Metroidvania than a RPG.
Okay, yeah.
It's more action game than something like Final Fantasy 16 is.
You can backtrack. You can go around the levels. Yeah. I understand. So okay, sorry. Action-based game over there, and Metroidvania, and then you got, of course, in Knights of the Old Republic, and you got many other RPGs that came out.
Star Wars
in the Star
Galaxies,
Wars.
the game that you heal yourself by sitting in front of a dancing Wookiee.
I love it. That's already the top of my list. But anyways, I'll take it for a ride here. I don't want any Jedi in this game. Zero
Okay.
Jedi. This is during the Clone Wars. And this is going to be a Star Wars Clone Wars squadron-based RPG.
Okay.
And so you can basically build your own clone trooper squad from the ground up, from the very beginning, and you go and do mission-based style, kind of like not tactics based though. I want more stealth based / first person shooter type of environment. So you got characters going along with you. They have certain traits and skills. They could be a sniper. They could have heavy artillery, anti-artillery. Depending on the mission you go in, you might want to choose different characters to deploy with you. And then you can, throughout the mission, you can switch between these characters basically, and you can take control while the rest of them can be AI or what have you. And then you can have follow certain commandments or whatever. So I'm thinking a very in-depth Clone Wars based RPG. I wanted it to be more like it's following a main story, but you can do side missions, and then based off of your choices in the main story, that can take you different parts of the galaxy, and maybe go to stretches that you wouldn't do otherwise into different planets. I want to see other memorable clone trooper characters like Cody and like Rex and Echo and a bunch of other clone troopers that we know from the animated series. And if you pre-order today, Ryan, you will get the Bad Batch initial missions, where you can interact with the Bad Batch clone troopers, and you get to go along 5 missions with them. I want this so much. This would be number 1 game for me. So there you go.
Yeah.
Star Wars Clone Wars squad based RPG.
That sounds pretty cool. In fact, actually, when you start describing it, Garrett, the one of the games that I thought about, like maybe would fit well, like that may work well with the gameplay style, is something like Valkyria Chronicles, like something where you've got like the overhead map of the battlefield, but then you've got like you pick your clone trooper, and they have like a certain like distance they can run, and then it goes to third person to do the shooting action, and then it goes kind of back into the and then you kind of take your turns that way. I think that'd be like an interesting approach to the combat too. But it sounds really cool. Like I've never really been like a Clone Wars person. I haven't really seen the Clone Wars show. I don't know the clones at all.
Good.
So I never really ventured down that rabbit hole with Star Wars. But it sounds like an intriguing game, Garrett. And I think again, a lot of people who are Clone Wars fans would probably be like eating that up. For sure.
Me.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We understand episode 2 sucks. Star Wars episode 2 is not a good Star Wars movie, but
the sand, it gets everywhere, Garrett.
The Clone Wars world and the timeline and the politics and the mission development that you can do in that game is endless. You can, I mean, like Star Wars Battlefront basically did it. Star Wars Battlefront 2 basically developed that, and I just want to make it just a step further. Instead of this battle to battle major battlefield like game, I want more smaller, more focused, character driven, squad based missions.
Yeah. I mean, so cool. That's something that Sean and I actually talked about on Xbox Drive a couple times when it comes to Star Wars, where I feel like the prequel trilogy universe makes so much more sense for games than it ever did for movies. And
yes,
I feel like that just seeing more of that makes perfect sense. In fact, we kind of saw similar ideas that what you brought up with Star Wars Republic Commando.
Yes, that's true.
So I think like that, we know that formula works with the clone troopers. So I think that, again, you're onto something there, Garrett. I feel like you've got something, and plus, we haven't really had like a traditional Star Wars role playing game in forever. Again, the last one was KOTOR 2. So
that's true.
It's time for a new one. Because don't get me wrong, there are some RPG elements in some newer Star Wars games, but when was the last time we had like a traditional role playing game of some kind?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
but no Jedi, 0 Jedi. I would love it.
Yeah. Also, I love I Can't See's suggesting in the chat, because I would also love to see like a Diablo style Star Wars game. I think would be really cool too down the road. But of course, all with Jedi, Garrett, because we love Jedi. They're the best. They should be in everything.
Oh my gosh.
All right, Garrett, ready for my last one? I got one.
Yes, go for it.
More here. And then we'll go to honorable mentions, of course. So my last one comes from a franchise that is near and dear to Ryan Turford's heart. One of my favorite all-time franchises, going all the way back to the NES. We've had modern iterations of this franchise, but we've never had a role-playing game in this franchise before. And that franchise is Ninja Gaiden from Tecmo Koei. I love the Ninja Gaiden games. I love how the fast action style of Ninja Gaiden. And yes, none of them have really had RPG elements. So you might be wondering to yourself, well, Ryan, how the heck does Ninja Gaiden work as an RPG? And let me tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take you all on a ride because we got to talk about this. So I envision this out of all the games that all the franchises I listed tonight. I actually see Ninja Gaiden as the franchise that should be in the traditional turn-based JRPG style, where you act in the universe of Ninja Gaiden. There's already like a bunch of characters that kind of already exist in Ryu Hayabusa, who's of course the main character of Ninja Gaiden's party. But we've never really seen them on screen together other than a couple fight sequences or like it's at certain points in the games. But it would be super cool to have a traditional turn-based game where they're all kind of in a party together, like traveling and doing all these different things across Japan, or across the world even, because like the modern Ninja Gaiden games especially are like kind of like globe-trotting adventures where you go to different parts of the world. So I would love to see maybe something like that where you have Ryu, Rachel, who kind of acts as like the tanky character. She's got a big hammer. You've got Ayane, and she's a ninja, so she can be like the stealthy rogue-like character of the party. And then you've got Momiji. She's like a staff wielder, and she can almost be like the damage dealer of the party and also kind of provide support. And basically you would have your party to kind of fight fiends across Japan and kind of around the world. Fiends are kind of like the demons of the Ninja Gaiden world, to basically stop this grand plot of the fiends, of course, trying to take over the world. Also, the ninjas themselves have access to Nimpo, which is basically the ninja equivalent of magic. You have that access to that in the Ninja Gaiden games. So of course that perfectly translates over to like a magic system or an ability system that you could use in the game. Like you could have ninja abilities, like either like speed abilities or Nimpo abilities. And they might have separate gauges depending on the character you're using them with. And I think it would just be like a really cool, like traditional style JRPG just based off the Ninja Gaiden franchise and just doing something different. And again, kind of going along with the theme of my list here, really expanding the world of Ninja Gaiden, and telling a good story there, because there is some lore in the Ninja Gaiden franchise, and I think that there could be some more stuff. I think that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden. I don't. Of course, I haven't played these games, but every time I hear about these games, really good. Really fast action paced style, and I would love just a different pacing of those, and the way you mention all the different villains in the world, it seems right for that type of style. So yeah, I would be down for that for sure.
Nice. All right, Garrett, let's get into our honorable mentions. We'll go through these pretty quickly. We won't do our full pitches. We'll just mention them. So the three I've got, Dead or Alive, kind of going past going off the Ninja Gaiden idea, because the Ninja Gaiden takes place in the Dead or Alive universe, so kind of having them kind of bridge together makes sense. I also had House of the Dead from Sega, the shooter zombie game, and then Armored Core was my third one. Kind of like what you talked about with Titanfall. Like I would love to see like a tactics Armored Core game. But what did you have for your honorable mention, real quick, Garrett?
My one honorable mention, of course, is Resident Evil card-based role-playing game. Just original story, but with old characters coming in. But it is all about just building a deck and then just mixing around that deck with different cards, different characters, different monsters, different weapons. I would totally be down for this. A SteamWorld Hands of Gilgamesh style Resident Evil card-based RPG. Let's go. We are printing money with this.
It's happening. Sure. People will eat it.
It's happening.
All right, Garret, let's party up. We're gonna start with Yarden, who says, "I would love it if the next Final Fantasy was a role-playing game." Just kidding. Hope you guys have a great show. Of course, I had to include Yarden's comment in here because, of course,
I love it.
Yeah,
it's great.
Next up, Blaze Knight said, "I don't remember what games were discussed last time. I'll say Fatal Frame, Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Bloodstained, and BioShock. I'm thinking either traditional turn-based or more tactical, like Breath of Fire, Dragon Quarter, or Parasite Eve. I just want more horror RPGs. I am with you, Blaze Knight. That has been my theme. The whole show is horror role-playing games. We need more of them, and there just aren't enough of them. So I agree with you." Next up, Darstridia says that they want a Kirby RPG, but they also have a basic question for us as well. What do you think health mana potions taste like, and what kind of candy is rare candy? So we kind of had a taste of this because when Final Fantasy VII Advent Children came out, Garret, Square Enix produced an energy drink called Mana Potions that they sold in Japan based off Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. And I had one of those because it came in a special can that my friend Carol sent me from Japan, and it totally tasted like an orange energy drink. So
that sounds about right.
That's what I imagine they kind of taste like. But
really, I think these taste like total crap. I think they're just disgusting, and it's because the only reason why you're drinking this is for the health benefits. Yeah. So pain is gain. You're drinking these, it just tastes like garbage. It really is. It's like a sewer system down there, but it helps you out at the end. Yeah. So
it's like Robitussin, the old Robitussin analogy.
Yes,
it tastes awful, but it works.
Yes. Yeah. And then what kind of candy is rare candy? Every time I seen the rare candy in the Pokemon games, they look like bubblegum to me. So I'm imagining bubblegum.
Yeah, actually, you're right. Like it's probably like Bazooka Gel or something like that. Like that's probably what it tastes like.
Bubblegum.
Next up, we got Rybo that says 100% BioShock. I need to see more of Rapture, but another that might be fun, Zelda 2. Absolutely, Rybo. We need a remake of Zelda 2. But Rybo has a question for us. What do you spend your insert currency of choice here on in most RPGs? Potions, weapons, armor. I like to hoard all my gold in RPGs for eventually a scenario, an emergency scenario where I need to spend all my money on something that just never comes. So I will get away with just buying the bare minimum of upgrades or potions. But for the most part, I just hoard the money like a dragon. That's kind of what I do.
Yes. Yeah. I try to be pretty balanced with it. It depends game to game. I think I lean more towards if I don't need to pay for this, I don't pay for it. And so I just kind of keep off until kind of the next thing. And then if there's crafting in there, I always go for the crafting part, like crafting a weapon, crafting an armor, rather than buying a weapon, buying an armor, so on and so forth. So yeah, that's mainly me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Last question of the night comes to us from Nagachaka, who says, just for fun, let me ask the two of you, which RPG franchise could benefit from a non-RPG spinoff? For example, I just learned that there's a dancing rhythm game for Persona 3, 4, and 5, thanks to Delroy. Have you played these Persona dancing games? I haven't yet, but they look incredible. Yes, Nagachaka, we've talked about them on the show a couple times before, but the Persona dancing games are really good. I really like them a lot.
They're great.
Yeah.
I platinumed the Persona 4 dancing all night on Vita. It was great on Vita.
Yeah.
So
my answer to Nagachaka's question, I feel like Shining Force needs a spin-off to bring it back to a tactical role-playing game instead of being a third-person action RPG.
Yeah, come back. Come back to the original
spin-off that
recipe.
Brings it back to the original formula. That's what
I love it. Yeah. I love it. I think for me, I like Elder Scrolls. I think I'm kind of done with the RPGs and a world like the open world MMO stuff. Give me a very focused narrative based game. And it doesn't, you can have some RPG mechanics in there. That's fine. But I want it to be very focused and like maybe more Telltale than anything, more of a decision based game. I think that would be really cool to expand that world. Give it a story, go through the different parts of Tamriel. Yeah, I would totally be in for that.
Yeah, And they've tried it before with some other Elder Scrolls games, but yeah, it would be cool to see something different with Elder Scrolls. But anyways, Garrett, I think that's going to do it for tonight's show. But before we go, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me on Twitter at Bland Explosion. You can also just shout out of the Discord. I am expanding my horizons. I am talking on the Xbox Drive. I'm talking on the PC channels over there. So and of course the RPG Cave. I am and currently reviewing a game for y'all, and it's going pretty well. So I can't wait to share that with y'all later in the next couple weeks or so.
It might be a game that will be of interest to listeners of this show, and that is all I'm going to say.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. As for me, you can find me over on the Twitters at Ryan Turfer. You can also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming. Right here, youtube.com/Carpool Gaming. Of course, twitch.tv/Carpool Gaming Live. And of course, podcast services around the globe. Also, please come hang out with us on Wednesday for Xbox Draft 300. I'll be really sad if you're not there. So please come hang out. Oh, well, thank you, Garrett. Well, and that's going to do it for tonight's show. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been the 101st level of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.